Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. This is a crazy week on Capitol Hill as we go on breakneck speed all the way to final recess at the end of this week. And so I really do appreciate you all taking the time to be here because I think this is such a critical panel, and a special thanks up front to the doctors who have joined us. You all have so much of our admiration, and you're such an asset and an important factor in the public debate that's occurring right now. I'm Charmaine Yoest. I'm the executive director of the House Values Action Team, and I want to welcome you on behalf of Congressman Robert Aderholt. He is the chair of the House Values Action Team. He's also the chairman of the Subcommittee in Health and Human Health. Labor H. We always use our acronyms, and so now I'm stumbling over it when I'm saying it out long. The subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, and so as you know, since we're voting this week on the CR, we're hoping that he'll be able to stop by, but he may or may not. So if he comes, he'll be right here, and that is why this space is open. But it is my great honor to welcome you, and I just want to say a few words about working together with Christina Francis and the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who have helped us assemble this remarkable panel. You know, one of the things that is most frustrating to me as a woman who is pro-life is this idea. I've been accused very many times in my career of being a traitor to my gender. And I tell people any chance I get that one of the deepest reasons that I am pro-life is because of the harm that abortion does to women. And I was deeply affected early in my career hearing the stories of women who felt betrayed in their abortion experience and what they were told, and more importantly, what they were not told. And so that's why I love to talk about pro-life issue and how important it is to protect life and to protect women. But let's be honest, the men and women who have given their time to be here today, their voices are so important in this debate with their credibility, their experience, and their expertise. And particularly, I want to comment on their courage of having their convictions, of having been on one side of this issue, having seen the truth, and then having the absolute courage to swim against the prevailing tide in our culture and to speak up and to speak the truth. That is a measure of deep courage, and you all have my respect and my gratitude. With that, it's my great pleasure today to get to introduce to you the brand new Executive Director of AAPLOG Action, Rebecca Weaver. I was just thrilled because the stronger AAPLOG gets, the more resources AAPLOG gets, the better for all of us. And so we're really, really thrilled to welcome Rebecca. She has a long line of experience in the political arena, which is fantastic for AAPLOG Action. She worked with Senator Cruz. She worked with our friend Congressman Gary Palmer, who's also from Alabama. And then most recently, she was with Texas Right to Life. So she brings terrific experience to this arena, and I'm going to hand it over to her, and she's going to moderate for us today. Thank you, Rebecca.
Is that better? Okay, great. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to everyone who's watching on our live stream. We're excited to just share these voices with you and doctors who previously have performed abortions and sharing just their experience and the threat that abortion poses to women's health. And so I just want to briefly explain AAPLOG Action. Like Charmaine said, I'm the new executive director. We are the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs advocacy arm, just started this summer, and so we're excited to get to continue to work with all of you here on the Hill. So I'll get started without further ado, and I'm going to introduce our different doctors with a brief bio, and then they'll share their story, and then we'll have some questions for them. So we're going to start with Dr. Catherine Wheeler. She is an OBGYN who practiced in Salt Lake City, Utah for 24 years. She is also a former abortionist. Dr. Wheeler had a transformative moment one day while in the middle of an abortion procedure that opened her eyes to the reality of abortion. Later in her career, she developed midlife, women's health clinic, and educational programs at the University of Utah. She then developed a gynecology clinic with HCA St. Mark's Hospital. Dr. Wheeler now lives in Colorado, where she is a frequent speaker for life, exposing the reality of abortion. She provides testimony at the Colorado Legislature, writes informational opinion pieces and interviews for media, and serves with pro-life organizations to advance protections for preborn lives and advocate for and provide support for women and families. She's also one of the leaders of AAPLOG Colorado, which is the first state chapter of AAPLOG, and they are the individuals who had this brainchild for this event. So I'll give it over to her.
Thank you so much for coming today. I'm Dr. Catherine Wheeler. I'm also an ex-abortionist. While I did abortions, it's not what defines me, at least not anymore, and it's something I'm not proud of. I tell my story because people don't know what abortion is or haven't thought about it. I'm not here to condemn anybody. I don't have any stones to throw, but the truth sets people free, and witnesses to truth save lives. Americans have no idea, and they deserve to know. They have the right to know what abortion is and what happens. I was trained in second trimester abortions at the University of Utah. My first recollection of any conversation was actually in residency. And there, it was a center for genetic syndromes and also for high-risk obstetrics. It was a time you could opt in. You didn't have to do them. Now it's called opt-out. And what that means is that you had a choice back then. Now you actually have to go to your superiors and let them know you have an objection, which could completely change the trajectory of your career and your education. But back then, in thinking back, I find it really interesting. We always talked about our two patients and how we were trying to save both lives and maximize the health of both. But interestingly, in these situations, there was no talk about the baby. It all became about what the mother wanted. And the narrative was, women have a right to choose. These are really hard, difficult situations, and they have a right to choose. It's not up to us to judge. This is something that we offer, and we offer the training, and this is how you help women. If you care about women, this is one of the things that we do. And darn it, I care an awful lot about women. So it was mostly the female residents who actually stepped into those roles. So I was trained to do these second trimester abortions. When I went to private practice, knowing that I didn't really like doing these procedures, I decided I didn't want it known that I did these, but if my own patient came to me, knowing how hard it would be to go to an abortion clinic, I would agree to do them. So I did that for a few years and then decided I didn't want to do them anymore. But not long after that, a young woman came in, 16 years old, with her mom, completely devastated. Dr. Wheeler, I want to be a doctor like you, and I'm pregnant. I can't have the life I want. If I continue my pregnancy, she's weeping. I say, I don't do them anymore. Please, Dr. Wheeler. So for the first time, I did a first trimester elective abortion. I can't tell you anything different was happening that day. I went into a room. She was asleep. I remember it very vividly. I started an abortion, and it was just like the whole room went dark. And I looked around. Nobody seems to be having the experience I'm having. I was aware, if you've ever seen the movie Nefarious, if you haven't seen it, please see it. I was aware of just this dark, evil presence. I don't know how else to say it. I was not a spiritual person at the time, but all I knew is it had to do with what I was doing. What I was doing was pure evil, and I've started it. So I'm sitting there, my heart's racing, and I just said, okay, I've got a choice. Like, I'm the one now with the choice. Do I continue, or do I stop and put her life at risk? And I chose in that moment to complete the abortion. So the patient physically did well, and my other patient died. At that point, I said, I'll never do another one of these again. And I'm all like, who's going to understand this experience? So I never told anybody. And it was about 15 years or so later that a bunch of things happened. But one of them was we were starting to recognize women with early pregnancy loss suffered when they didn't grieve the loss of a true human being. And so I realized I'd had 2 miscarriages in residency and had never even thought about the babies, because if you can do abortions, you don't think about those young babies as being real human beings. So as I was grieving for the first time the loss of 2 of my children, it occurred to me that these babies that I aborted also, it was the first time I'd thought about them for all those 15 years, that they actually were humans and that I was actually a murderer and had killed many people. I mean, who's done that? And the second thing that happened was hearing about a non-medical person being invited to see an abortion. And if you can imagine, like, people have no idea what an abortion is. I consider it like people think somebody's pregnant, they go into this black box, and then something happens, and then they come out unpregnant, and it's like it never happened. Although these women's lives have permanently been changed, whether they recognize it at the time or regret it or not, there's been that baby existed. This woman went home to bed for weeks afterwards, and I said to myself, well, that's a normal reaction, and how could I have ever done anything like that? And it totally changed everything I thought about abortion, and made me eventually become very pro-life enough to start talking about it. So I share my story because people don't know. People need to know what is true. And secondly, there's healing and there's forgiveness on the other side of abortion too, which makes us able to stand up here and kind of warn people and encourage healing and moving forward for women. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Wheeler. Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. So next we're going to have Dr. Patti Giebink share her story. She's a board-certified OBGYN who has over 30 years experience delivering babies here and in hospitals overseas. She formerly had her own practice in Sioux Falls and also worked at Planned Parenthood performing abortions for a time. She left her job at Planned Parenthood in 1997 and has not performed any abortions since. She also previously held national office at the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or ACOG, on their Committee on Indian Affairs. She now speaks on the critical differences between elective abortion versus the practice of obstetrics, that is, the care of both mothers and babies. She is the author of the book Unexpected Choice, An Abortion Doctor's Journey to Pro-Life. Dr. Patti is now retired and lives in Chamberlain, South Dakota, and enjoys bicycling, reading, and prairie gardening. She's also a member of Doctors for Dakotans, a group of medical professionals in South Dakota working to highlight the extremism of an amendment on their ballot in November, Amendment G.
I spent over 30 years delivering babies, both in the U.S. and overseas. And I think I've seen it all. I've seen even complications that are now rare in the United States. We're very fortunate for the health care that we have. In my work in the U.S., in my state, I worked mostly in rural hospitals, which in the previous hearing that we went to, this committee meeting this morning, they were talking about OB deserts, and I've worked in a number of OB deserts. So also, I worked at Planned Parenthood for 3 years. Some of the time I was doing my own OB practice, delivering babies, providing women's health care, and then one day a week I would go do abortions at Planned Parenthood. And some people have said, well, how could you do that? And I said, well, you know, everything was kind of compartmentalized. You know, my OB practice was this, and doing abortions at Planned Parenthood was that, and it didn't really overlap. But the 1 year that I worked full-time at Planned Parenthood, I think my eyes were really opened. And fortunately, it only lasted 1 year, and then I got fired, which was such a relief because I tend to persevere in things longer than I should. So based on my experience doing thousands of abortions, I came up with my top 10 list. So what are the top 10 lies that the abortion industry wants you to believe? And these aren't necessarily in priority. So one that was so obvious to me is the lie is that every woman presents to the abortion clinic of her own free will. Wrong. Many are pressured, coerced, manipulated, and they go there just because they don't think they have a choice. Number two, that every woman who shows up at the abortion clinic is firm in her decision. Wrong. So many are undecided, and many are looking for answers and they still have questions, and their questions never get answered. Instead of answers, they get herded through like cattle. Number 3, they believe that every woman has looked into other options like adoption. And again, however, most women feel that they have no choice. Number 4, every woman has sought counseling from their own doctor, minister, and family. However, most women don't want anybody to know. And I heard over and over again, women would come in and say, nobody knows I'm here. They drove to the clinic and they drove home. So they weren't put under. They had minimal anesthesia, usually just a local. Lie number 5. This references the amendments, the amendments that are being brought to our different states. So I'm from South Dakota. So what I hear is that the Amendment G, is going to restore Roe, when actually the amendment goes far beyond Roe and promotes unregulated, unrestricted abortion. Our version says there can be no regulations in the first trimester. No regulations. And in the second trimester, a few. So I did abortions under Roe, and in my state, our legislature had enacted a number, in fact, I guess the number is over 100, but dozens of laws protecting women, such as a waiting period, so those who are undecided hopefully will make a decision. True informed consent that tells a woman what's being done and what her true risks are and the complications, both immediate and delayed. And also, it was required to screen for coercion. There were safety standards for both clinics and physicians, so just a number of them. Line number 6. Our medical association in South Dakota believes that any regulations interfere with doctor-patient relationship. I hear this over and over again. Well, when I was at Planned Parenthood, I was never allowed to have a doctor-patient relationship. They came in, they paid their money, they signed their forms, they did their lab, and then they showed up in my room for an abortion. I was just a technician. Planned Parenthood didn't want to know what I thought or what I wanted to do. They had a big binder of policies and procedures, and I had to stick with those. They also say abortion is safe. Line number 7. It's like taking Tylenol. Well, if that were true, why are we seeing the 2 deaths in Georgia, which are very different? Because one woman wanted to go legally, and she got her medications legally, and then went home and developed symptoms, and appropriately went to the ER, and the ball was dropped for whatever reason. The other woman bypassed all that, got her medications online, who knows what they were, and she died all alone in her house. She had medical problems, medical conditions that a practicing OBGYN can deal with. And maybe she wanted that pregnancy, but she didn't want her lupus and her other problems that she had. She was worried about it. And she did not seek appropriate care. Number 8, lie. So we all heard, or maybe some of you weren't born yet, in the Clinton time where, let's have abortion safe, legal, and rare. Okay, I can speak that it's not always legal. So South Dakota passed a parental notification law, and the first minor that came through the door was never identified. Their parents were never notified. And when I found out later, nobody cared. I'm like, I could have gone to prison. Nobody cared. You know, the director said, oh, well. Number 9. We're getting to the end. The abortion industry wants you to believe that abortion reduces maternal mortality. Now, we heard that this morning in the committee room, in the committee meeting. Well, I'll tell you something. Since Roe was overturned in our state of South Dakota, by the statistics from the Department of Health, reveals that there has been a 60% reduction in maternal mortality in my state. Lastly, I want to tell you what is true. The truth is that unregulated, unrestricted abortion hurts women. And if all these amendments pass, there's going to be an epidemic of cases like the 2 tragic ones in Georgia. Women who lost their lives. Women are going to suffer and women are going to be hurt. Because without any regulations, like for instance, the FDA withdrew the protections for women, and now we see these cases getting medication online. No follow-up, no doctor to even call. And they tell them, don't just go to the ER. So we need to not be confused. I want to make it perfectly clear, elective abortion is not obstetric health care. In South Dakota, our law, 34-23A-1.2, it says that, and this goes to the intent. The legal intent of an elective abortion is to terminate the life of a whole, separate, unique, living human being. That's the intent. So in my 30 years of delivering babies, which I loved, I still have women come up to me and say, oh, you delivered my baby, and showing me pictures. And it wasn't always easy because in a rural OB desert with very few resources, I'm it. I can't call somebody to come in and help me. I'm it. But the intent was always a healthy mom and a healthy baby. So all you have to do in your mind is make the distinction. What is the intent? Is the intent to have a healthy mom and a healthy baby, or is the intent to end the life of a separate, unique human being? That's elective abortion. It's simple. I don't know why doctors are confused. And when I hear what I heard in the committee meeting this morning, and it just doesn't make sense. If you believe in our training, and we have good training, I had excellent training, absolutely excellent training, then that's what we need to stand by. So again, it's so clear to me that abortion is not health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Giebink. So next we have Dr. Kathi Aultman. She's a board-certified OBGYN with over 33 years of experience in her field. She's also a former abortionist who performed first and second trimester abortions. She was the co-founder of the first rape treatment center in Jacksonville, Florida, and also served as the medical director of Planned Parenthood of Northeast Florida for 2 years. She is a life fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, or ACOG. Dr. Aultman serves as both a lead and contributing author on multiple studies highlighting the fatal and severe risks of abortion drugs for women. She has testified extensively on human rights issues before congressional bodies, state courts, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. She also represents the Florida Physicians Against Amendment 4, a group of 400-plus physicians who are currently working to educate Florida voters about how this constitutional amendment is out of step with the way physicians like her practice medicine in the state.
It's really great to be here. I have to put in my little plug. Florida physicians, there are physicians that are against our amendment. Huh?
I'm just volunteering my effort.
Oh, okay. Just before entering medical school, I got pregnant. I made the decision to have an abortion because I thought I wasn't going to be able to be a doctor. Made me really sad after I got there, and I met women that had had their babies first and then went to medical school. So I could have still been a doctor, and that was one of the lies that I believed. And one of the lies that young women are being told all the time is, if you're pregnant, you can't do what you want to do. Your life is ruined. By the time I entered my OBGYN residency, I believed that abortion was a woman's right and that no woman should be forced to carry a pregnancy she didn't want.
I became a doctor because I wanted to help people, and I thought the best way I could help women was to help them end their unwanted pregnancies. I didn't see any difference between a human embryo or fetus and the chick embryos that I dissected in college. If the baby was wanted, I called it a baby. Otherwise, I called it a fetus. Excuse me. I did first and second trimester. I did first trimester D&C with suction abortions and also second trimester D&E or dismemberment abortions. I tried to make these really painful procedures as painless as possible for my patients. I didn't even consider what the baby might be feeling. Now we know that at 12 weeks, everything is present for them to feel pain, and even at 8 weeks, they respond to painful stimuli. The only time I had qualms about doing abortions was when I realized I was trying to save a baby in the NICU that was the same age as babies we were aborting. I continued to do abortions even into my pregnancy. My baby was wanted, theirs was not. I didn't see any problem. But somehow after delivery, I made that baby-fetus connection. And when I went back to the clinic after I delivered, I realized that I could no longer pull the arms and legs off little babies just because they weren't wanted. Sad thing was I still believed in abortion, continued to refer for abortion. Excuse me. What began to change my opinion was in my practice, I began seeing these young women with unplanned pregnancies who were doing really well, as opposed to women who were having abortions and dealing with the psychological and physical complications of abortion. And that didn't go along with the feminist rhetoric that I had believed. My change of heart really didn't come, though, until a friend said, I know you strongly believe in abortion, but would you read this article? And it was an article that compared abortion to the Holocaust. My father was an observer when the first concentration camp was liberated in World War II. So I'd grown up with all those stories. It suddenly clicked. I could never understand how the German doctors could do what they did until I looked at what I was doing, and I realized they could do what they were doing because they didn't consider their victims as human, just as I didn't consider the fetus as a human being. That's when I became pro-life. I have to say that none of the abortions I did were for medical or fetal indications. I also never had any confusion throughout my practice about was I doing an abortion when I was treating an ectopic or treating miscarriage? That's very clear. It's been very clear to, I think, all OBGYNs forever. And it just makes me so angry that this confusion is being put out there and people are believing it. And that's what's killing women, is this rhetoric that, oh, don't tell them that you've taken the abortion pill, just say you're having a miscarriage. Well, how can you properly take care of someone when you don't know their history? The two women that died, sepsis is the leading cause of death from the birth control pill, from the abortion pills, mifepristone. And I was involved with the paper that tabulated all the risks and problems from the mifepristone, misoprostol combination, and looked at each and every event report. I think one of the things that struck us all as we were doing that was the lack of care given to women. Most of them were told repeatedly, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, or just go to the ER, or they were said, we're told, just go home, and it'll be fine, you'll pass everything. And then, thankfully, they went to the ER and their lives were saved. I think the misinformation propagated by those intent on promoting these abortion amendments is criminal and has caused several of these deaths, which they are blaming on the restrictive abortion laws. In Florida, we have Amendment 4 on the ballot, which will allow abortion for all 9 months for basically any reason on the recommendation of an undefined healthcare worker, not even a doctor. It will negate all laws relating to abortion, including necessary safety regulations and the requirement that abortions be performed by physicians. It will allow parental notification, but strike down our parental consent law. In states that have passed amendments like this, all of their laws regulating abortion are being systematically dismantled, and the public is being forced to pay for Medicaid abortions. Our state issued guidance on current abortion law stating that the law did not prevent physicians from treating miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, premature rupture of membranes, and molar pregnancies, and yet pro-amendment forces continue to spread the misinformation that the current law prevents women from getting treatment for those conditions. No one likes government interference, but that's been necessary in general to regulate the practice of medicine to protect patients, not just in obstetrics. My feeling is those that are unhappy with the current law need to work with their elected officials to change it. Trying to change the law with this kind of an amendment is like trying to remove an appendix with a chainsaw, and the unintended consequences are going to be catastrophic.
Thank you, Dr. Aultman. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Anthony Levatino, is a former abortionist who shares his unique perspective about why a physician who has been trained to give life would take it away. The story of his conversion has educated and motivated audiences worldwide. Before his involvement in the pro-life movement, Dr. Levatino performed over 1,200 first and second trimester abortions as part of his OBGYN practice in upstate New York. Fast forward to today, Dr. Levatino has testified about the dangers of abortion before Congress. His story, combined with practical advice on how to expand the pro-life community, has made him a sought-after international speaker. He is also a member of the Arizona Physicians Against Prop 139, a coalition of over 100 Arizona physicians who are working to inform the public ahead of Election Day about this proposed constitutional amendment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As was mentioned, I performed over 1,200 first and second trimester abortions in my career, up to 24 weeks. But I'm here today specifically to speak about Arizona Prop 139. Proposition 139 is being sold to voters as a way to guarantee that women and their healthcare professionals can make autonomous decisions about abortion with no input or oversight by anyone, including the state or the state medical board. The word doctor intentionally does not appear anywhere in the proposition. And indeed, doctors can and will be cut out of the process entirely. This, of course, until complications occur. It would allow women to obtain surgical or medical abortions from non-physicians, including nurse practitioners, nurse midwives, and physician's assistants for any reason or no reason at all, up to fetal viability and after viability when, in language of the law, in the good faith judgment of a treating healthcare professional is necessary to protect the life or physical or mental health of the pregnant individual. The language of the proposition is carefully crafted in vague and general terms, with no qualification regarding how severely threatened a patient's physical or mental health must be to justify a post-viability abortion. Leaving that determination solely in the hands of a financially interested health care professional, and I keep emphasizing because that's the word of the proposition, who may not have the knowledge or skill to treat the known complications of abortion procedures with no professional oversight whatsoever. This will open the door to any and all abortions at any and all gestational ages up to birth for any and all reasons. This is the unstated goal of the proposition. Personal autonomy and the ability to make one's own health care decisions is a wonderful thing and one of the 4 bedrock principles of medical ethics, but it's not the only one. All humans, including the patient and her living son or daughter, are entitled to ethical considerations that include beneficence, doing good things and promoting that individual's welfare, non-malfeasance, not causing harm, and justice, the concept that all humans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Personal autonomy is not unlimited, especially when it interferes with the rights of others. Every obstetrician knows that he or she has charge of two equally important human beings whose welfare must be considered. Current Arizona law allows any woman to seek an abortion up to 15 weeks without restriction and beyond when necessary to avoid death or serious bodily injury. Arizona law was carefully crafted to enhance the safety of abortion procedures by requiring, one, either medical or surgical abortions be provided by a qualified physician, not a midwife, not a nurse practitioner. Pre-abortion ultrasound, and this is the best determination of gestational age and rules out ectopic pregnancy. I'm going to say something about that. Some may criticize and say, we don't need to do an ultrasound before every abortion. When I was doing abortions in New York, and New York legalized abortion 3 years before Roe versus Wade, we had free reign. We could do whatever we wanted, pretty much. But in my practice, no abortions were performed ever without performing an ultrasound first. We didn't even charge the patient for the ultrasound because we never wanted to be in a position to think we had maybe a 9 or a 10-week pregnancy and it was really a 13 or a 14-week pregnancy. This is how complications occur, and this is how patients are injured. We did them, even though it wasn't required. Parental consent requirement with appropriate judicial bypass when needed to protect minor children is also a part of current Arizona law. And I'll say once again, in New York, I had every legal right to do an abortion on a 12-year-old without her parents knowing about it. But we had our own guidelines that we made because we are not agents of the state. No abortion was ever done by me or anyone else in my practice without parental knowledge and consent. We never wanted to be, I cannot imagine a physician or non-physician healthcare professional who wants to be in a position where you get to call mom and dad and say, oh, by the way, we perforated your daughter's uterus. Or, you know, she's in the emergency room now with a severe infection following abortion pills that I gave her and you didn't know about. It's also required that abortion providers have admitting privileges. Every patient has the right to have complications treated by their treating physician or by a physician designated by that treating physician to provide appropriate care in an emergency. And it also includes a requirement, Arizona law currently requires a requirement for adequate and complete informed consent. All of those requirements protect women seeking abortions and enhances their safety. All would be challenged in the courts if Proposition 139 passes, allowing women to obtain abortion pills from non-physicians by telephone or video chat from out-of-state or even foreign providers who would never see or examine that patient to confirm their gestational age and rule out potentially fatal ectopic pregnancies, and who are not there for that patient if and when complications occur. Patients are being and will simply be dumped into emergency rooms when those complications arise. When they call at 2 o'clock in the morning with severe bleeding or pain, frequently the answer is, well, go to the emergency room while I roll over and go back to sleep. And this is the extent of the follow-up care those providers who are making money doing that abortion provide. This is insane. As we've all learned from the 2 heavily publicized cases in Georgia, those complications can be fatal. And despite all you hear about those cases, I'll add one more thing. Both of those poor women would be alive today if they didn't swallow abortion pills. Women deserve better. Many will be swayed to vote for Prop 139 because they feel strongly that a woman's health should be protected. I couldn't agree more. In many ways, Prop 139 endangers women in the name of unrestricted abortion and goes way too far.
Thank y'all. So a couple questions. You all mentioned abortion measures that are on the ballot in your various states and in other states across the country. So given your experience performing abortions and now practicing life-affirming medicine, what do you think about these proposals?
I think that the public doesn't understand what's going to happen. And it saddens me as I've talked to friends and different physicians. They're all leaning towards the proposition because they feel, well, the government shouldn't interfere between a doctor and the patient. But what they don't understand, and I think when they hear, before viability, I think they're thinking little. You know, the viability point may be as early as 21 weeks, but most people feel more like 23, 24. That's 6 months. You know what a 6-month pregnant lady looks like. These are babies that are fully formed, big babies. And people don't realize that you can do it for any reason. And then you actually can go all the way to term based on the health recommendation of this undefined healthcare person because of the way that health was defined in the companion piece to Roe, which includes their emotional health or their age or all of these other really non-medical things.
From the perspective of being in Colorado, I moved there 5 years ago, and I had no idea that abortions are done until the due date, even as an ex-abortionist. And I said, how do you even get a baby that size out? As you mentioned, the size of the abdomen. I stood outside Warren Hearn's third trimester abortion clinic on Sunday. In Colorado, there are no regulations. Our abortion law is very short because there's nothing that can stand between a woman or a girl and an abortion. And Amendment 79, please vote no, puts that in the state constitution. So his clinic has, and all the abortion clinics in Colorado are unlicensed, unregulated. It's not even clear in our law that you have to be a medical professional to do them. They're never inspected. And then 29% of our abortions are done on patients from out of state. And so they go home immediately. Like I would never send a 35-week patient delivered home the next day. Like we'd have her nearby where she could reach me. He has had a horrible complication where she tried to get justice through a lawsuit, and they couldn't find a peer to be an expert witness, in other words, another third trimester abortionist. So women are being harmed, not able to get justice. We're taking away, if this passes, parental notification. We don't have consent. But we know with the borders being open for abortion, that would mean even more trafficking, even more abusers being let off the hook as the women are being harmed. We heard about the awfulness of rape and having an abortion, and we had somebody at our legislature come in and say, I was raped when I was a teen, and I got over the rape, but I never got over my abortion. And she was willing to say that publicly as she wept. The last thing is taxpayer funding. So they're trying to take away a ban on taxpayer funding with obviously the hope of expanding, like Oregon, our so-called abortion programs to pay for also women from out of state and to become, as they say, an abortion, not a refuge, sanctuary. Sounds nice, doesn't it? But yeah, coming to Colorado, get your abortion paid for. We have 2 traveling third trimester abortionists. They literally say that's what they do primarily, and they go to multiple states and do abortions, which cost about $20,000 or more. So that's where we are in Colorado and where all of these other states are trying to get to. So vote no, Amendment 79. Thank you.
So I want to make sure we get to talk about something that's at the forefront of everyone's mind is these 2 tragic cases out of Georgia, the women who passed away, Amber Thurman and Candy Miller. Can y'all share with us from your perspective and your experience of what really happened in these cases and to these women?
I've not looked at the medical records. I don't know that anyone here has seen the actual medical records. But what I said still stands. Both of those women would be alive today if they hadn't taken abortion pills. That's number one. The proximate cause of their death was the abortion pill, period. Now, the first one, Amber, had sepsis, an infection. This is, as they've said, this is a complication, a known complication of abortion. It was interesting, again, in that hearing this morning, they talk about, well, the rare complications. They don't define the word rare. Abortion pill complications are not that rare. If you read the research, anywhere from 2 to 8% of patients who take abortion pills are going to require further medical care, typically in an emergency room. 2 to 8% is not rare. And they need good care. The patient comes in. Now, what little I've heard of the case, Amber in particular, was it sounds, based on what I've heard, this lady had an infection with dead pregnancy material still in her uterus. That needs a DNC, like yesterday. It needs it now. And the care was delayed for whatever reason. That's all I know. As I said, I did not review the records myself. But this is a case that's screaming to be reviewed by the state medical board and, as far as I'm concerned, a good malpractice attorney.
Okay, so one of the things with that is we hear that pro-life laws like Georgia's heartbeat law do not allow a physician to treat a pregnant woman who's having complications, who's having a life-threatening or major bodily function complication. So as physicians, can you explain to us some of the examples where you might have intervened to care for women and their babies in situations where a woman's life was threatened or a major bodily function was threatened?
Yeah, I think there's so much misinformation about that. And like Kathi, it just makes me angry that this could be so easily clarified. We have always known that there were times that we had to intervene to save a mother's life and that that's not abortion. The thing that comes to mind to me the most is ruptured membranes in the second trimester before viability. I myself faced that in my last pregnancy. And what we're hearing from women is that they think they have to have an abortion to save their life, when really life-threatening sepsis happens about 1.5% of the time. In my situation, and what we can offer to women, which is life-affirming, is if you don't have an infection and you're not in labor, there's no complications, then we can watch you and see what happens for a while. The majority of those women are going to deliver in the next week or 2 weeks spontaneously. We can watch for signs for infection. I was very fortunate. My membranes resealed, and I had my baby without a lot of complications until at 37 weeks. So we should be offering people life-threatening care, giving appropriate care, and delivering at the first sign of infection. So it doesn't need to be an immediate abortion, which is what I'm hearing from a lot of women that they're being told. We can always intervene to save a life.
I think also for years, well, from the beginning, we've always known that, we had 2 patients, and you try to take the best care you can of both. Now, there comes a time sometimes when, late in pregnancy maybe, the mother's life is at risk, and we have to make a decision to deliver the baby early. We don't have to send them off for an abortion to make sure the baby dies. We deliver the baby early, and then we do everything we can to help that baby. That is not an abortion. An abortion would take several days of dilating the cervix, or inducing labor, which is just like what we would normally do, but we'd have more care for the baby. We just don't kill the baby. And if the baby dies, that may happen, but we have not committed an abortion. And it saddens me that they're trying to confuse all of this and make, and saying, oh, well, an abortion is necessary. Also, for babies that have fetal anomalies, we now have something called perinatal hospice, which is wonderful because they will walk through that pregnancy with the mother and help the mother care for her baby the best way that she can. Even if the baby's going to die when they're born, she has done everything she could for the baby and doesn't have to feel guilty about killing her child. I was in a hearing where a woman was sitting next to me, and she felt that she had to have an abortion because her baby was going to be abnormal. And she was one of the most disturbed people I've ever met, as opposed to women who just go ahead and take care of their baby and have the counseling that they need so that they can handle it. I think the real fear is that the baby won't die, and then they'll be saddled with a baby that's defective. Physicians are afraid they're going to get sued. So the first time there's something wrong, and as a matter of fact, there's a state that states it, that if you don't offer, I don't know what they stated, but we were talking earlier, if you don't at least offer abortion when an abnormality shows up, even a small abnormality, that's your risk of being sued for unlawful life or something. So it's just really sad.
I'm discouraged and angry about what's going on in Arizona. I know it's happening in a lot of the other states. Tens of millions of dollars are poured into Arizona, and the people of Arizona are being treated to tens of thousands of ads telling them to vote yes on this proposition. And they are, in my opinion, deliberately conflating elective abortion with miscarriage care. They are deliberately conflating it with ectopic pregnancy. And this is absolutely beyond absurd. I'm a pro-life physician. I teach medical students, and I've made very clear to them, what would I do and what did I do as a pro-life physician when someone shows up with an ectopic pregnancy and a fetal heartbeat? I take care of the ectopic pregnancy. It's going to kill her. There's no argument. That is not an elective abortion. How do I take care of people that come in with miscarriages, and most especially when they're infected, they get a DNC. You don't think about it. That's an emergency. And it disheartens me because, again, these are so vaguely worded, and all those ads about, we're here for women's health care. We need abortion, and especially even late-term abortion, to save women's lives. That is what we call in medicine male cow excrement. I mean this. I worked as a pro-life physician 10 years in a tertiary referral center, the school I graduated from. Later, I was on the faculty. And we took care of all the severe complications in pregnancy: cancers, decompensating cardiac function, decompensating renal function, severe preeclampsia. In my career as a pro-life OBGYN over 10 years, I terminated hundreds of pregnancies. I say I've stolen the word. I ended hundreds of pregnancies to save women's lives. And I never had to deliberately kill a single child to do that. This business about abortion being an option when you've got serious pregnancy complications is fallacious, especially when you're talking about late second trimester or third trimester abortions. It takes days to prep the patient. It takes anywhere from 4 to 7 days to accomplish one of those late abortions. If you've got a patient with serious medical complications, you don't have 4 to 7 days to fool around with it, or she will end up dead. You stabilize your patient, you do a delivery. So this, and people are being confused by this, and I think they're being confused deliberately.
So we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to respect everyone's time, but I want to wrap up our conversation with a bow and talking about women's health care. And we talked about a lot of the hard things, right, of as doctors who formerly performed abortions, but that's not the end of your story. And so finishing off with now as doctors who provide life-affirming care, can you just share with us, what do American women today deserve as far as it comes to their care?
Well, life-affirming care is very positive. What women really need is optimal maternity care. They deserve all this talk about access and reproductive health care, and somehow reproductive health care excludes maternity care, which is mind-boggling. So they deserve the same benefits as somebody moving towards abortion. The maternity deserts are mostly in rural areas. All these things about abortion bans causing maternity deserts. If you look at the map, they're almost all rural, and there are a lot of reasons why there are not maternity delivery areas and obstetricians in rural areas, and a lot of it has to come from financial support or lack thereof. So we need to be addressing maternity deserts. We need to be improving maternal mortality. If abortion improved maternal mortality, then the United States should be one of the lowest in the world because we're one of the few countries that has abortion until the due date, and instead we're higher than all the other developed countries. So we need to be looking at all the factors, improving maternal health, improving women's health. Primary basic care is not tied to abortion. We don't need abortion for women to get health care.
I think it's important to remember, too, that maternal mortality includes abortion mortality. So as we have more abortions and more women dying from abortions, our maternal mortality is going to go up.
The one thing I like to ask is, why do women have abortions? Why? People don't always talk about that. And in my experience, a lot of it is financial. I just can't afford to have another child. So why don't we address the social problems that are causing women to want to end their pregnancy? And sometimes that's not what they really want. They want to have the baby, but they don't have the resources. So all the time and money that's being spent in all our states pushing abortion could be spent on programs to help women keep their pregnancy, support their family, provide resources, and as neighbors and church members and whatever group you're in, we need to come alongside women who are pregnant and give them help. Not judge them, not condemn them, but to help them. And this is where our time and emphasis should be, instead of arguing about whether abortion should be made legal and all the other things that we heard this morning in the committee meeting.
Every time, and I'm not here very often in Washington, but every time the plane lands in Washington, I remember many years ago when I was on a Southwest flight, Southwest being Southwest, and late on a Friday night, and the plane touched down, and the flight attendant got on and said, "Welcome to Washington, D.C., the happiest place on earth," and the whole plane cracked up. I thought of something this morning, and this kind of triggered it, thinking here. This town and the politicians in it love to talk about investments. We're going to invest umpty-ump $1 billion in this, and we're going to invest umpty-ump $1 billion in that. And I understand the language, and it can make sense depending on what you're talking about, and that language is used for a lot of topics. The best investment this society could make for women and their children is prenatal care. That's a real investment. I mean, I'm a capitalist. To me, investment is I put money in, and some point in the future, I get more money out. That's an investment. And it's been shown again and again and again, every dollar you spend on prenatal care results in saving $4 on the other side. Even if you weren't going to be talking about the women or the babies or the dads and their health, from a monetary standpoint alone, prenatal care makes infinite sense.
Thank y'all, and thank you for being here. Thank you, doctors, and thank you, House Values Action Team, for coordinating this for us. So is there anything else?
Well, thank you again for all of you all taking your time to be here today and traveling to DC. It's really been an honor to be with you. And I'm going to, Christina, the work that you all are doing with AAPLOG is so valuable. And particularly if you all haven't seen their Twitter feed, a lot of the material that they're doing is there. And I hope you guys are going to take the testimony from today and break it up into bite-sized bits, because a lot of people need to hear the things that you've said today. So thank you for that. And thank you all again. I hope you have a great rest of your week.